Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be solving a very famous question of Leetcode, that is house robber. It's a very important question of DP, and I'll be explaining you the logic as well as the coding part for this particular question, that how you can approach a DP problem. So the question is in such a way that you have to rob the houses, and you have to rob the houses just to get the maximum profit out of it. The only condition is that you cannot rob two houses which are in a which are consecutive to each other. That means if we'll see the example over here, that this array is depicting the number of houses that we have in the sequential form. You cannot rob the 0th index house and the first index house. These are consecutive to each other. That means it's going to alert the police if you're going to be robbing two houses which are adjacent to each other. You can only rob the houses which are in such a way that it's going to be having some alternative way. That is, you can rob the houses which is at the 0th index and at the second index, that is first number and the third number. Or you can either go from 0th to the first, second, and the third index. That means you can skip two houses as well. You can skip three houses as well. It's just that you just cannot go for the adjacent houses. So that means this particular condition itself is giving us the hint that it's the question of DP, because in this question we are having so many different possible cases, right? That means you can either go for the 0th index, and you can go for the third index, you can go for the fourth index, you can go for the fifth index. It's just that you have to maximize your profit. That's how you can just get this thing easily done. From the second example, you can see that you have been given like five number of places, and you can go for the this, you can go for this, and you can go for the second, you can go for the third, right? That means you just have to maximize your profit. And from this example, you can see that how we are able to get the maximum profit is by going from 2, 9, and 1. That means we are skipping the first index as well as the third index over here, right? 2, 9, and 1, that is giving us the 12. And also if you'll go for only 2 and 9, that's going to give you the 11 number as a profit. So that means there are so many different possible cases which are getting formed in this particular question, right? So that's how you have to think, and you have to just get the maximum profit out of it. So how we can approach this particular question? See, what happens is that in DP question, the logic is pretty much a little bit tricky. If you have done enough of practice of the DP questions, then you can just easily tackle the question. And the code is also like very small. It's just a 9-10 lines of code, and you can get your answer. But the thing is that you just have to think in such a way that you have good enough practice of the DP problems, and you are able to approach it. It's just a little bit of trick that is basically used in every single type of the question. I'll be trying to make maximum videos of the DP questions, so that I'll be covering up most of the different types of the questions, and you can get your understanding. So for this particular question, you can see that from the question itself, you have to make different types of the choices, and the choices are in such a way. Just imagine for a case that the index are in such a way like 0th, first, second, third, fourth. So that means you have in this particular array, what you need to do and what you can do is that you can either take this number, and then you have to skip this number, and then you can go for this number. That means you have been given in a condition that wherein you have to either pick or skip. So imagine for a case, the very first 0th index you have already taken. So that means in the next number that you will have to take is the second one, and the next number you will have to take is the fourth one. So that will be the possible one arrangement. So I'll be writing down the arrangements which are possible: 0, 2, and 4. And from the next iteration, what you can do is that you can skip this particular number, 0th, and the next arrangement which will be formed is the next possible arrangement that we'll be having is first. That means if you have taken this first number, then you will be given a choices that you cannot take this particular number, and the next number that you can take is the third. And then after that, you won't be able to take the fourth number. That means this is one of the arrangement that is forming over here. And the next arrangement that you can form is basically, if you have skipped 0 and 1, then you will be having the next arrangement as we have already covered up we can skip the 0th number. Then the next arrangement will be like you can take the first number as your first number, and then you can take the third. This is your next possible arrangement. What is the next possible arrangement that you can form over here is like you have skipped all these three numbers, you can start from the third, right? And if you have taken the third, you cannot take the fourth number. That means these are the possible arrangements. Either you are skipping the number or you're picking the number. That's what is happening over here. And that's what we have to think for this particular question as well. I'll write the code and I'll explain you to this particular logic once again, because it's just that whatever we are thinking, we just have to write down the code accordingly. So, in order to solve this particular question, what I'm going to be doing is I'll be using a helper question, a helper method, and that is going to return me the answer for this particular question. And inside this helper method, what I need to pass on is the array that is given to us, and also the index from where I'm going to be starting my logic. And this helper function is going to do all the things which I have just explained right now, and it's going to give us the answer back. Okay, so let's start down writing down the logic. So very first thing is that integer nums, which is given to us, and the integer index. Okay, what's going to be the base condition for this particular question? So the very first thing is that we're going to be using the DFS approach. We're going to be calling this method once again and again and again, and that's going to give us all the possible arrangements that's going to be possible for this question. All right, so the very first base condition in order to stop is that once the index is going to be equals or greater than that of my length of the array, then I have to get stopped, right? And I have to return the 0. Okay, so basically if we are going from first to the last of the array, when exactly we have to stop is that once we are reaching to the last index of the array, then we have to get stopped. And what exactly we have to do when we are calling the method for the very first time, then either we can pick the number. If we are picking the number, then we have to take that particular index, plus we have to call the method for the next iteration. And for the next iteration, what we need to do, we have to pass on the array and also the index. So imagine for a case that you have already taken the very first number, then you cannot take the next number which is adjacent to it. That's going to call the police. So what you need to do is that you have to skip the next number and you have to go to the way after that next to next number. That is index plus 2, right? And after that, if you are, imagine for a case, the very first thing that you are doing is you are skipping the 0th number, the very first number you are skipping, then you have to start from the first index. So what you need to do, you are skipping this number, you are not taking this number, and that means if you are skipping that number, then that means you have to start from the next number. So that will be nums and the index plus 1, because you are taking the next number. And what you need to do is that you have to return the math.max, whatever the thing which is coming as the maximum of these two. That's what you need to return. All right. So this is what the smallest and the concise logic for this particular question. And let's see if this particular thing is passing all the test cases or not. Let me run this code. This is passing the test cases over here. And let's try to submit this particular answer and see what's going to happen. So basically, as you can see, what is going on? It is exceeding the time limit. So basically, what is happening is that imagine for a case that we have so many different possible, number of houses that we have, a very large number of set. That's going to exceed the time limit because we are not storing the answers. And what is happening is like it is going to call this, same index again and again, and it will be operating. It will be, having so many operations done. Imagine for a case that for the very first iteration, you are just solving the array up to this point, and in the next iteration, you are solving the array up until this point. So that means For this particular case, for these cases which are common to for both of the possible arrangement, it's going to be called again and again, and that's going to exceed the time limit. So that's what we don't want, right? So what do we need to do? We have to just store the responses. And how we can store the responses? We have to just make a DP array, and that's going to be saving the responses for our question. And this size of this particular array is going to be the length of my array. And what I need to do is, just for the better understanding, I'll be just filling this particular DP array with -1. And I will be passing this DP array. And after that, what do you need to do? You have to store the responses for this particular arrangements that you're getting. So what I have done is I have created the DP array, which is of the same length for this particular, nums array which is given to us, and I'm going to be storing the responses. Initially, I filled the array with -1 so that there will be no confusion, and I'm passing this DP array. What do we need to do in this particular DP array? The very first thing is that we have to store the responses, and how are we going to be storing the responses? We're going to be just whatever the number which is coming from this particular logic that I've written over here, that is the maximum out of it, I'm just passing that to that particular index. And also, not just that, if my index is already filled for that particular, iteration, if it is not equals -1, then I just have to return whatever the number which is already stored in that particular index, and I'll be returning simply that. Let's just run this just to see if there is any kind of compilation error or not. I haven't passed the DP array from here. I'll be just running. Let's see if it is passing. Yes, it is passing, and it starts on the code. Okay, so it is beating the 100%, and it's a very concise and simple logic. So like I mentioned, that DP questions are just a little bit of trick is basically used. You have to just find out what is the arrangement, what is the kind of the question that is basically asked, and based on that you have to write down your logic. It's just very simple, like 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of code which is written for a DP question. As you can see over here, we have only done the things in our helper method, and it's just a 5 line of code. Only the thing is that the trick was has to be used, at how you need to follow up with the all possible arrangement. It's a kind of skip and pick kind of a question, and you have to follow this pattern. If you have any kind of question, you can put that in the comment box, and see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.